What's up, everybody? How's it going? Gonna be a little bit of a different Tech Tip Tuesday video for y'all today. As you can see, Ricky's in the background. He hasn't been on the channel pretty much since, gosh, Texas Mile in March, which was how many months ago? Ricky hasn't been on the channel in 5 months, and he is thoroughly missed by me. I know. I'm sure you guys miss him too. This is how dusty he currently is. Very sad to see him in this state. Still no transmission. For those who don't know, the transmission is at Liberty Gears. Getting a face-plated gear set put in it, because in the last Texas Mile, the stock T56 was totally sucking wind big time. And while the car has been down for this long, I've done a few upgrades to it. Starting off with, I now have a set of Smeding Performance 275cc CNC ported LS3 heads. I used to run a pair of CNC'd 243s, the old Cathedral Port heads, and now I've switched to the LS3 head. I also milled the chambers down a lot more. I think I have a 58cc chamber on the head now, so it will be about 13:1 compression. The camshaft is still the same for now. I haven't changed cams yet with the new cylinder heads. Depending on when I get the transmission back, I have to make the next Texas Mile in late October, which is getting really close. And so if I get the transmission back in the car in the next couple weeks, I should have enough time to chassis dyno the engine again, make sure everything's working and healthy, look at the torque curve, look at the RPM, and then we might be able to order a new cam for it to hopefully squeeze a little bit more out of the engine or shift the torque curve around. But that's going to be time dependent. If I have literally the time to wait a couple weeks for a cam and then install it, re-chassis dyno, a lot of work. Something else we did to the high ram is, this is a billet spacer plate that ICT makes, and we permanently welded it to the high ram. Normally it has an O-ring, and then with that welded on, we were able to make this little throat enlarger thing right here. Trevor and I did, and so now there's so much more plenum volume going into the manifold. With all of that and the new power the engine's going to make. Oh, we're also switching to a 102 mechanical throttle body. So I have a new wiring harness I made that will pin into the factory GM harness, because the ECU in that car is the exact same as like the F-body computers. And so it already has the IAC valve controller and the TPS pins open. So in theory, I should just be able to pin in those two sensors and I'll have a mechanical throttle body. So we can upgrade from the 90 to the 102. What else? Oh yeah, with all the extra power now, bigger fuel pump. So I'm running an Aeromotive eliminator pump with a couple big Holley filters. That'll mount under the car. And that brings us to the Tech Tip Tuesday for today. There's a big nasty yellow jacket over there. Hope he stays over there. So, to power that new pump, I'm going and running a new fuel pump harness in the car. These are the power wires. These are 6-gauge power wires for Aeromotive's fuel pump kit. But I need to hook up the trigger wire, which is this little guy, to trigger the 60 amp relay, which is way overkill for this pump. I know, this pump only needs like a 30 amp relay, but if I'm going to put a big fuel pump wiring harness in the car, I'm going to do it once and do the biggest one they make, so that way when I put like one of their brushless 5 gallon per minute, 10 gallon per minute pumps in the car, I already have the harness for it. So I want to kind of show you all the way that I like to add wiring. Like if we're going to add a wire to a car, what's the correct way to do it so that it's a permanent connection, and not permanent, but a very secure connection that's never going to fall apart or fade or anything. So let's crack open the fuse box here. Basically, I'm going to trigger this relay. For those of you who don't know how a relay works, this relay is connected straight to pure battery power, and then it gets a trigger that closes a magnetic circuit that completes the connection and delivers power from the battery straight to the fuel pump in the car. Because obviously these little wires can't handle the amperage and current that fuel pump's going to draw, so it needs to be wired directly to the battery with big wires, but we need to activate that relay with a smaller little trigger wire. So what I'm going to do is tie it right off of the OEM fuel pump trigger, so that when the computer turns on the fuel pump, like the OEM in-tank pump, it'll automatically turn on this relay and my new big pump will run. The OEM C5 pump that's in this car, I'm no longer running to the engine, but I am putting in a really small one, like a stock rated flow pump, to basically maintain the Venturi effect so that both the passenger side and driver's side tank work correctly and I don't have any issues at low fuel. So, to do that, let me just look at this little fuse diagram. This is really easy. So the fuel pump is triggered on fuse 13. Now let's look at it. Fuse 13 is actually this little yellow guy right there. There's a 20 amp fuse. So, might need to do some maneuvering because this guy is in the way. Okay, so basically, this add a fuse circuit was over here. This is for my little Lingenfelter box, so I can run a 58X LS3 style ignition or pickup crank cam signal with my factory C5 computer, which is 24X. And I was powering it over here so that whenever the PCM got its power, this would turn on, but I just switched it to whenever the ignition is turned on for the engine, that automatically turns on, so that should be fine. But circling back, I want to basically add a circuit, which is I use these little things, to fuse number, what was it, 13, which powers the factory fuel pump relay. So I really like using these because they're really handy, they're easily to service and maintenance, and you don't have to get inside of your fuse box itself. What I don't like about them is that they come with these crimp, non-insulated connectors. And technically they do have a plastic blue insulation on them, but the inside is still open to the elements. So, what I do with these is let's just cut this straight off. Alright. We'll go ahead and strip it a little bit. Get some exposed wire. And then I use a pack of these non-insulated butt connectors. They make them in a whole bunch of different sizes. Here's the one we're going to use. And we'll just feed this into here. Like so. And then we'll go ahead and crimp it like we normally would. Like that. A nice crimp. Now let's place it where we need this to be installed. And because we're just powering a relay with this, I'm just going to put a 10 amp fuse on it. That's going to be more than enough. And then our original fuse and circuit can live right underneath it, which will be fine. And these are both powering just relays, so I'm not going to overload this circuit of wiring at all. Make sure this still fits over everything, which it should. Alright, then we have this wire coming out of the air motive harness, so we'll go ahead and run it through the fuse box where we want it to end up. Nice and tightly and neatly, which is about right here. Go ahead and cut this clean in half. Now I'm going to pull some of this sheath back a little bit. Alright, so now we have this cut, but we have the sheath all frayed out. The heat shrink I use has glue all inside of it, and whenever you heat this up, the glue will melt and come out and completely seal your connection. So what I like to do is we're going to feed this heat shrink over the loom if we can. It's tricky, but you can get this. That way whenever we make this final connection, the loom is not going to fray anymore and be completely sealed off. So just take some patience and Work it in there nice and slow. There we go. Kind of spin it on. Alright, now the sheathing is about halfway into the heat shrink, but we can still move it up and down on this wire, like so. So now, strip our wire a little bit here, and then we'll pop it into our little connector. Crimp it again, like so. Okay, after you crimp it, make sure you give it a test, and you should be able to pull this pretty hard without it flinching at all. And then we'll just slide our heat shrink over. I use a heat gun. And you know you've got it when you can see the glue coming out around the end of the heat shrink. I don't know if you'll be able to, if the camera can, oh, it kind of can. Right at the end of the heat shrink, you can see the glue that has melted out of it and sealed on that wire. You can see it pretty good on this side too, over our braid. So now everything is totally environmentally sealed. So if any water gets up in here, we won't have any issues. And now we can pull this up, kind of loop it around where we need it to be, reinstall it, and we have a pretty nice wire now to control the new fuel pump harness. So there we go. New fuel pump relay is set up to be triggered when the factory fuel pump turns on, which will be nice. And that's pretty much all I've got for you today. While I'm here, we'll go over what is going on with Ricky again. 13-to-1. It was 12-to-1 with cathedral port heads. Now it's got LS3 CNC ported heads. It's got the high ram all modified up. I'm running an external regulator now for that new pump that feeds back to the tank. Data logging pressure right off the regulator. The fuel is going to come in out of the tank, out of the pump, Y into these two lines, and then run through the motor, or through the injector rails, come back out, go to the regulator, and then it will be returned back to the tank. I also added a V-band, straight out exhaust, no merge or anything, no mufflers. So that'll be nice. And then on the inside, I did change to a quick release wheel. I'm running the MPI drag concept wheel. I've got to figure out what bolts I need to mount on this hub adapter. Also have a big 3-quart Moroso accumulator mounted up on the roll cage. Kirky seat's still there. And then on the back, of course, faceplate at T56. And then we still have hiding up in here the Tilton triple disc clutch. It's up there. There you go, now you can see it. So, that's it. That's all I've got for y'all today. Kind of a quick last second upload. I know, I'm sorry. We just moved into a new house, so it's been absolutely chaotic with how many projects there are. I had no idea that moving into a home required just so much work. You never really appreciate all the things that are already set up and done for you until you have to do it yourself, like fans, blinds, water softeners, whole bunch of fun adult type stuff. So there Ricky sits. By the way, I'm losing the hood, and I'll see y'all later.